Before we spend too long on individuals, let's spend some time looking at teams. So let's go back to last season and look at the best 5 attacking teams and the best 5 defensive teams and crunch some numbers. Guys, welcome to the Gianni YouTube show. Today is going to be all about looking at data from last season, and we're going to be comparing attack and defense to produce my top 5 teams. And when we do that, we're going to look at those teams and go, yeah, we need a little bit more cover in our game week 1 teams to back that defense or to back that attack. So we've got some surprises coming up for you. Now, of course, there are multiple metrics you can compare attack and defense with. And I was on the Scout members area earlier going, look at all these attacking metrics. I want to pick 2 or 3 of them for convenience. So we're going to pick, when comparing attack, goals. Okay, from last year, the teams that scored the most goals will rank the 5. Same with XG, same with shots on target. By the time we rank all 5 in those 3 categories, we'll then produce our totalizer to produce the best 5 attacking teams. And we'll do the same with defense. We'll look at clean sheets, we'll look at goals conceded, and we'll look at shots conceded on target, right? Because again, I really like that metric, because if you're conceding shots on target, it's a bit of an issue. If you're conceding shots from range that are low XG, who really cares? So let's start now with attack. And you're all probably thinking, I know who's the best attack. And you're probably right on that one. But you're going to be surprised with who comes in at second and potentially who makes the top 5. So let's have a look at some of those numbers, starting with, of course, goals. No surprises. Man City have scored the most goals last season, followed by Arsenal. And then we had Liverpool in 3rd, Brighton in 4th, and Spurs, might surprise a few, scored more goals than the likes of Man United and Newcastle, come in at 5th. So how does that compare to our other metrics? Well, Man City still top with XG, but Brighton came out 2nd with XG. Now, Brighton's XG suggests they should have scored 74 goals. They scored 72. So slightly underperforming, whilst Arsenal, for example, they rank 4th. They only, according to their XG, should have got 72 goals, and they scored 88. So they overperformed massively, which you might not think when they've got people like Jesus in their team who are, underachievers when it comes to XG. But obviously they've got plenty of overachievers in their team as well. So coming in at number 4 was Arsenal. 3rd was Newcastle, which hasn't made the top 5 list overall, that is. And then we've got 5th Liverpool, and in 6th, we actually don't have Spurs. We've got Spurs coming up in 8th. So again, this is the top 5 teams from goals scored. We're now looking at their XG, okay? So it's not the top 5 necessarily in this list for XG. As I mentioned, Newcastle, for example, don't feature. They came 3rd. And then let's look at some shots on target as well. Man City did not have the most shots on target last season. Brighton did. So again, Brighton, 2nd for XG, 1st for shots on target. Let's see where they rank when it comes to the end. Arsenal came 5th, below Liverpool. Liverpool actually had more shots than Arsenal on target. And then Spurs in 6th. Now, Man United, again, they don't feature in the top 5 because they didn't score the top 5 in terms of goals scored. They came 3rd. So United would be in 3rd, just like Newcastle would have been in 3rd in XG. But again, we're not looking at Newcastle or Man United. They don't feature in the top 5 because they didn't score the top. They weren't in the top 5 for goals scored. Are you with me? I think you are. So look, the long and short of it is, when we're ranking the best attacks and defences, if we're putting a rank against them all, let's add up their points. So Man City, 1st for goals, 1st for XG, 2nd for shots on target. We go 1, 1, 2. That's a total of 4, right? So they're on top. Brighton have a total of 7. They're ranked 2nd. Arsenal have a total of 11, so they're 3rd best attack. Liverpool are the 4th best attack. And Spurs are the 5th best attack. So there we have it. A little bit surprised that Man United and Newcastle aren't slightly higher, but it does show, despite Liverpool having a poor season, their numbers are still very good. The goals scored were very good. Spurs, massively overperforming their expected goals. They should have been 8th for expected goals, but they were 5th for goals. Well, they've got players like Harry Kane and Son and good finishers, world-class finishers in their team. So no surprises there. But I look at this, and my learnings from this are, quite simply, let's look at the top 2. The top 2 are suggesting that Haaland isn't enough to cover Man City, and maybe Matoma isn't enough to cover Brighton. So more on those 2 in a minute, but let me just give a shout out to Fantasy Football Scout, because all this data is from the Scout members area, and they sponsor this YouTube channel all season, which is awesome. And you guys will know me from my Scout videos in the past, and I'm a pro pundit there. If you aren't already a member, go check out the members area. Pre-season's the best time to sign up, and you get a wealth of data. So look, is Haaland enough to cover Man City? I think we need 2 as a minimum Man City players, possibly even 3. At the moment, my current draft is 3 Man City. There's 3 midfielders there in Mahrez, Grealish and Foden that are all 7.5. Pick the player you think is nailed and has the most upside. And if that's one of those 3, put them in your team. We always worry about Mahrez minutes. Grealish last season was pretty safe. But for me, Foden's the most exciting of the 3. We just need to know he's starting and got a space in that 11, which historically he's not had. And then the defence, we'll see the defensive stats later. But again, for me, you want a Man City defender in there. So could we see triple City? I think we could in many drafts. We could also see triple Brighton. At the moment, most teams have got Matoma only as their Brighton attacker. Now, could you look at a double up of Enciso and Matoma, or March and Matoma, or Ferguson and Matoma? Perhaps you can. I think the only thing stopping us with that is we don't quite know who's absolutely nailed in that Brighton attack. Because when you add Lallana and Gross and Welbeck to the names I've already mentioned, there's a lot of Brighton attackers there to fit in 4 positions. The one that's nailed is Matoma, and you would hope Solly March. But the numbers are so good for Brighton, especially when you look at the second half of last season. But look, this is all over. This is last season's data. And second for XG and first for shots on target. Make no doubt about it, this is one of the top 2 attacks in the league when we go off these numbers. Now, Arsenal aren't far behind, sure. But even if we're saying top 3, top 4, with the value of Brighton players and the prices that they're so affordable, we should probably be looking at more than just Matoma. And I'm going to go back and now look at my draft and go, do I need to look at another asset? And who is that asset? I'm not quite sure on the answer yet. But this tells me, this is why I love doing this sort of exercise, I probably need to back that Brighton attack more. Let's move on now to the defence. So the defence, we looked at clean sheets, the number of clean sheets, because that's where you get your FPL points from. You don't lose and gain FPL points from every goal you concede, but clean sheet points so important. We'll also look at goals conceded because of course it gives us an idea as who is the best defence. And then we're going to look at shots conceded on target. I want to know who's conceding those bigger chances on target, right? We could have done big chances. We're going to go for shots instead on target. So let's have a look at the ranking. The teams that make the top 5: Newcastle, Man City, Man United, Arsenal and Liverpool. So it's almost the same 5 that made the attack. We're seeing Man United instead of Brighton. So Brighton featured in the attack, Man United feature in the defence. When we look at total clean sheets though, it's Man United that come out on top. We've got Newcastle in second, joint with Arsenal and Liverpool. And then it's Man City in 5th. Surprisingly, City only kept 13 clean sheets last season. What we saw at the end of last season was City winning games comfortably, but conceding 1 sloppy goal. And all those Ederson owners will remember it was painful for them. Ederson was on 6 and then he was on 2. A lot of silly goals. But when you look at the other metrics, a lot would suggest that Man City are the best defence in the league. So sure, they didn't keep a huge amount of clean sheets. 13 compared to United 17. But when you look at goals conceded, they're joint with Newcastle top. You got United in 3rd, joint with Arsenal, but 10 behind them, 43 goals conceded compared to Man City and Newcastle, only conceded 33. And then you've got Liverpool actually in 8th, but they still feature in the top 5. Aston Villa were 5th for goals conceded. Remember that one because they got a lot of 4.5 options. But then again, it's back to Man City for shots conceded on target. This is why Ederson is not a good FPL pick, because Ederson doesn't get save points and he doesn't get bonus points because they only conceded 92 shots on target last season. 92 shots on target last season. It's like 2 shots a game on target. An elite defence. And that's part of the reason why they won the Champions League. We all go on about the Man City attack. But this Man City defence is definitely worth looking at. And they don't have a defender with upside that they used to have in Cancelo. But John Stones at 5.5, if you can afford him, get him in your team. Ake at 5 million, I think is a really good option too. Ederson is a terrible option. Shots conceded on target. We had, as I mentioned, City first, then Newcastle. And we can see it was actually Brighton that came 3rd. But again, like Villa, they don't feature in the top 5. We're going off clean sheets for that top 5 metric. We've got Arsenal in 4th. Again, yeah. Early season Arsenal last year were the best defence in the league. And then they kind of waned towards the second half of the league. But again, very few shots against them. And then we had Man United in 5th. Liverpool down in 8th. And the Liverpool defence wasn't brilliant last year. But it started to keep clean sheets at the end of the season, which is why they feature in the top 5. So when we add up all the results, let's just give you an example. Clean sheets. We had Man City fifth, which really let them down. So Man City don't come out as the best defence in the league because I'm giving equal weighting to clean sheets, goals conceded, and shots conceded on target. So Newcastle, they were second for cleans, they were joint first for goals conceded, and they were second for shots conceded against them on target. So that's adding up a 1, a 2, and a 2. They had a 5, which gives them first, versus Man City 7, which gives them second. United third, Arsenal fourth, and Liverpool in fifth. So what does this tell us for FPL? Well, it clearly shows that Newcastle and City are the two best defences. They certainly were the two best defences. And we're probably not covering them enough. There's a lot of drafts I'm seeing without Man City defence. I think you need a Man City defender. Now, there's a lot of drafts without Newcastle defence. And surprisingly, I think that's okay. And there's one simple reason. The fixtures are dreadful for Newcastle. The fixtures are so bad for Newcastle that I understand why we're avoiding them early on. Because whilst we don't plan to wildcard, and very few of us book wildcards in game week 4 or 5 or 6, we know that eventually there's a good chance we'll be pulling that trigger early. Because most seasons, whilst we don't plan an early wildcard, we often do it. Loads of years I can look back and go, I wildcard in game week 4 or 5. And if you're doing that, that's when you bring in a Newcastle defender, because then their fixtures will have turned. They open the season with Villa, then Man City, then Liverpool, then Brighton. Ouch, it's not good reading. Then it gets slightly easier. Brentford, they got Sheffield United, they got Burnley, they got West Ham and Palace and Wolves. But the first 4 games are really, really tricky. So I think we can ignore Newcastle, but have Botman on your watch list. He's 0.5 cheaper than Schär. He's a 2 million cheaper than Trippier, 4.5 for Botman, 6.5 for Trips. He's $1 million cheaper than Pope. I think having either you start the season with Botman on your bench, and that's a good play, or you have him in as soon as you wildcard, or you look to transfer him in. But do we want to be wasting transfers on 4.5 million defenders 3 weeks in? Probably not. So definitely consider how you're going to get to Newcastle defence early, but also that City defence, guys, is a must. And I also think, look at this data, Man United surprised me a little bit, like 17 clean sheets last season. Again, Luke Shaw at 5.5, there's upside there with Luke Shaw as well. We know he's nailed. The United defence is good and their fixtures are pretty good. Right, they're not quite Man City level fixtures, but they're good fixtures. So again, we consider them. It also begs the question, Trent Alexander-Arnold at 8 million isn't a must-have this year. Sure, he's the game's best defender. And sure, he's going to get tons of returns, both attacking and some defensive. But I'm not sure he's going to get too many clean sheets. And with that, you could question, at 7 million, he'd be the best value player in the game. But at 8 million, he might just be a little bit too expensive. So if he was 7 or 7.5, I think I'd be listing him as a must-have. At 8, I'm not so sure. Will he be in my game week 1 team? Probably. But I am going to be looking at drafts without Trent, because that Liverpool defence, it's not quite the level of Newcastle and City and United. And I think Chelsea will be a good defence, and we know Arsenal is as well. There's a lot of better defences out there than Liverpool. So just bear that in mind when you're committing 8 million to Trent. And the likes of Robertson at 6.5, way overpriced. Look at that in isolation, he's overpriced in my opinion. So there we have our top 5 attack, top 5 defence. What do you guys think? Do you agree with my choices of metric here and how I've compared them? Obviously it's subjective, guys, and you can pick a wealth of stats and always change the narrative to suit whatever you're looking to come in terms of outcome. But the way I've done it, I think my attacking metrics of goals and XG and shots on target work. And then our defensive ones of clean sheets, but also goals conceded and shots on target against them work too. So really interesting to see the totals there. And obviously this is a bit of a stats heavy pod, isn't it? But nice to go nerdy for once, because often I'm more of a kind of eye test manager that will give you a lot of opinion stuff and a lot of tactical space stuff. But with most of my streams this season, I'll be using some data, usually not quite this wealth of data, but nice to have a little bit of variation in our pre-season build-up. So look, I'll be doing similar with some of the individual players. But as I mentioned earlier, before I look at players, I always like to look at teams, because I probably target teams first and then I go, okay, I want cover of Brighton attack, or I want a second Man City asset. Now I go shopping for my individuals. That's how I manage. And I know there's very good FPL managers out there that kind of don't care what team you play for, because this is a game about individuals. But I like to have that background info if I can. So hopefully you guys agree with me. If you've liked the show, then do hit the like button. And obviously, if you like what you're seeing around here, then if you're not already subscribed, please do hit that button. And you can look forward to loads of cool pre-season content from me. But guys, I will see you very shortly. Take care.